All right, I think we can get going. So thank you everyone for being here tonight for another one of our Dressage4Kids Zoom sessions. Just a couple notes. If you could keep yourself on mute, that would be great. That just helps minimize the distractions for our speakers. And if you have any questions for any of our speakers, you can write it in the chat and we will pull questions from there. And also mark your calendars. The next Zoom is going to be on March 28th, and that will be with Denny Emerson and Lauren Spreiser talking about conditioning and equine fitness. So I would like to introduce Dr. Johanna Kremberg. She grew up in Brunswick, Maine, riding horses at every opportunity. In 2010, Dr. Kremberg graduated from the Ohio State University College of Veterinary Medicine and spent the following year in a rotating large animal internship at the University of Georgia. Since then, she has worked in the New York metro area and now resides in Bedford, New York. She is a veterinarian and partner at Grand Prix Equine, the largest privately owned equine practice in Connecticut. They pride themselves on focused care for the performance horse. So welcome.
Great. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Johanna, or Dr. Kremberg. It's good to see some familiar faces, and I'm here reporting live from Bedford, but hopefully someday in the future, we'll all be together again. Okay, you can go ahead. My talk today is going to be on preventive care. So this is not necessarily what you do in a case of emergency, what you do when your horse is lame, but what can we do to help prevent those things from happening? And we all know that as spring sort of starts to come upon us, it's a little bit warm, nice, and starting to get balmy out there, that you start to think about your spring visit with your vet or your spring shots visit. And I'm really trying to help my clients reframe that spring visit from just a vaccination visit to really a wellness exam, which would include a dental exam. Of course, your Coggins test and your vaccinations will come during that visit. We'll go over those, getting your fecal on your horse to make sure they're not shedding any any parasite eggs, and then scheduling your performance evaluation before the competition season starts. So as we say in all of medicine, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So please take this opportunity to go over things with your vet that you might have come up throughout the year, throughout the winter, in your training so far, and make a little list of your questions so that you feel prepared. Of course, have your horse ready and clean and out of their paddock. We don't like catching horses in paddocks for their vaccines because they smell us a mile away. So go ahead to the next. All right, so what is a wellness exam and why would we do this instead of just going down the road and going down the aisle and vaccinating all the horses? So this is our opportunity to take a look, take your horse's temperature. I don't like vaccinating horses that have a fever, so we should always take their temperature before their vaccines. We listen to their heart, make sure that we don't have any new murmurs or arrhythmias from the new year. Listen to their lungs. A lot of horses, performance horses, having been inside a lot of the winter months, start to develop, mild COPD, asthma, or you might have heard it as RAO. Those signs can be like coughing, difficulty recovering from exercise. So all of those things you want to mention to your vet and have them listen to their lungs. We look at their teeth. I'll go on to that a bit more next. Look at their, evaluate their GI tract and go over with you what nutrition, what the horses are eating and what supplements they might be on and why. Most horses are over supplemented, and you might find out you could save a bunch of money by removing some supplements that your good, grain or fortified supplement maybe already covering for you. So any changes in your horse's body condition, anything that you've noticed, maybe you have new fat pads forming over their top line, or you have some decreased top line, or anything else you're realizing or seeing that their muscling isn't what you'd expect could have to do with their nutrition or could have to do with some other underlying cause, and worth pulling some lab work for that. And then, of course, those horses with PPID, those of you who have a cushingoid horse might know what PPID is, but it's also known as Cushing's. So those horses should get their blood drawn once a year to make sure they're on the right dose of their medication. Horses with insulin resistance, horses with maybe a chronic Lyme issue. So the spring will be a great time to check before the bugs come out to play and see where we're at. And then all those horses that are insured may need a new insurance exam for every calendar year. And then those horses that you might have on a colic program, like the one from Smart Pack, like the one from Platinum, those colic assurance programs require that you have a yearly exam, an oral exam, dental exam, and a fecal. All right, so why do we do a dental exam? So these red circles will show you some pretty severe hooks in this horse's mouth, or points. And if you don't put a speculum on the horse, you really can't quite see what's going on back in the way back's there. So these are the molars of the horse. And then in this horse, out on the sort of right side of those, that point, you can start to see a few little ulcers that have formed from those points. And you can imagine with a bridle and their noseband, their cavesson pushing against that could certainly cause some issues in the bridle with those points. So getting your horse's full exam done with by a veterinarian with a speculum on will let you know what could be going on. Difficulty with eating their hay, dropping grain, bitting or bridling issues, and then malocclusions, like horses that have an overbite or an underbite will start to grow these large hooks in front and in back. Okay, go to the head. And then what is a Coggins test? So the biggest thing I want you to see on this Coggins test is the date blood drawn. That is your actual Coggins test date. And then this will expire 1 year from that date. So this would be an example, like if you read this, it would be the horse's blood was drawn on April 23rd, 2021, and then it's going to be due. So don't plan on calling your vet out the day this is due, because if you want to compete in the next week or so, then your Coggins will be expired. Please give your vet a week at least to get your Coggins back to you before your next outing, and make sure that new horses, or if you're taking care of a bunch of other horses, please assemble all their Coggins so that we have a sense of when they're due. And ideally you get them done once a year all together as a herd, because it's very confusing to have a bunch of horses on different Coggins test schedules. That's usually when we end up running emergency Coggins right before your competition. So I also want to point out that it's good to have your vet scan your horse's microchip. A lot of competition requires a microchip now. And if your horse has one, you should put it on the Coggins. It's considered part of their official documentation now. And then we might write down their markings at the bottom. And then a lot of times now, if your horse is getting a rabies vaccine at the same time, I ask that you put their rabies vaccine information right on their Coggins. Now this Coggins works as both, a Coggins for competition, a microchip document, as well as their rabies document. Now, Coggins is testing for equine infectious anemia. This is extremely, extremely rare in our country. Out of 1.1 million Coggins tests run in 2019, only 89 were positive. So it's extremely rare to get a positive. Usually it's in Texas, horses that are coming in and out of Mexico. It's not that we're really testing necessarily to rule this out. It's really that we're testing to form this document and make sure that our country stays negative. And of course, so our vaccinations, the bread and butter of why we are coming that day, of course, but why we, really want to, I wanted to elucidate here what are considered your core vaccines, and then what are the ones you might discuss as needed, depending on your area and what you've had in the past on your farm. So rabies is all horses in our practice have to have a rabies vaccination for us to continue working on them, because it's a zoonotic disease that can transmit to humans. Some travel, especially if you're going to Vermont horse shows, require a rabies certificate for you to get from your vet. Eastern and Western encephalitis and tetanus. So those were in what we call EWT. You might have heard those are Eastern, Western, and tetanus. West Nile virus is a separate virus. Flu rhino, which also requires a certificate for most recognized shows. You've probably noticed that, especially going to HITS in our area, you're going to need a flu rhino And many area shows will require that. And then Potomac horse fever would be based on your area, but in our area, we do vaccinate for it. Strep equi, strangles, depending on your population and where you'll be traveling, might recommend that. Lyme vaccinations, a dog vaccination that I use in horses, depending on, where they're going to be trail riding and how many, endemic, how endemic Lyme is in our area. I like to prevent it as well. And fecal egg counts. So the old way was that we would deworm all of our horses on rotation. And what we found, unfortunately, in the veterinary community is that this has worsened our dewormer resistance. So I'm very much trying to get folks away from a regular just deworming on rotation. And the new way would be to deworm based on their shedding. So we pull your fecal and get you a list of all the horses on your farm, the high shedders, the moderate shedders, and then the low or negative shedders. And we only deworm based on their shedding. And the very high ones, we do like to do a reduction test 2 weeks after, make sure that the dewormer was actually adequate. And then lastly, once you're finished with getting your Coggins, your vaccines, and your wellness exam for your horse and all of your documents laid out, then I ask that you have your vet schedule at another day, not the day they got their vaccines, when they might not be feeling hot, but doing another day, setting up a performance exam. And a performance exam is meant to be before any lameness occurs. As your vet, we want to see your horse's baseline and get a sense of how they're doing on a regular day-to-day with your training techniques and what your plan is for the year. And then we'll flex them usually to see how their joints are feeling. You might have heard of flexion tests. And then I like to recommend a hoof balance radiographs to see how things are looking, the bony column inside of the foot, because we all know that no hoof, no horse. So very important for us to work with your farrier. This would just be an example of a, performance exam. I'm sorry, it does show up a little bit jerky, but we're just watching the horse, flexing the horse. And this horse ended up having like a very mild, you see a little bit of a head bob there. So the horse just has a very mild lameness that ended up becoming a bigger issue later on in the season. But, by finding this out earlier, then we can address that and talk about our options. You guys have probably heard about lots of great joint supplements and joint injections and things like that. But having a baseline and seeing where the horses are beforehand will help us out a lot. Okay, you can go to the next one. This is another example. So this was a horse that has no apparent lameness on the straightaway. And then when you get a saddle on, and when you ask her to do some 10-meter circles, then she starts to be, very evasive of the bit and show us that little lameness on the inside of the circle. So sorts of things that you may not see just jogging your horse up and down a straightaway. I always recommend getting a performance exam done with your horse under saddle, and you'll get a much better sense of what's going on and what might be limiting them in the season going forward. And then in our practice, you might have seen that I noted those inertial sensors. So this system is also called the equinosis. It's a precision lameness measurement down to the millimeter. So it actually sees even more asymmetry than we can see with our own eyes, and then quantifies that asymmetry so that if I'm sending this horse, across the country or down to Florida, and I can say to someone else, well, when I assessed the horse, he was 1 out of 5 left hind and a 2 out of 5 right front. I might say that to one person, and then to someone else, it could mean something different. So when I do a more precise measurement of that horse using this inertial sensor system that we use, you can just have a quantification of asymmetry that's a bit more accurate. So it doesn't replace our eyes or our hands or anything, but it does help us quantify. So this horse has a little bonnet on its head. That's one of the sensors, and he has a little one on his croup right at his pelvis there. That's the hind limb sensor. And then you'll see on this graph, that's what's reading across the graph. And then this is what the report shows. So we have on the left side, the raise of the forelimb strides. And then on the right side, the raise of the hind limb strides, and then the interpretation at the bottom. But what's cool about the system is that there's sometimes very mild changes, whether we're, bringing a horse back into work and we're getting a little bit backsliding, or we're bringing the horse back into work, they're getting stronger and getting better as they go. We have a great way to quantify that, just as an example, using this sensor system. And then hoof balance. So these are two cases. This top one has what I would call a flat palmar angle. So that bottom surface of the bone inside the foot is a bit flatter than we would like. So we usually like them to have a positive palmar angle. And that would be, a way that something that you wouldn't be able to assess just looking at the foot for your farrier. If you take these hoof balance radiographs, then you can tell them a lot more about what's going on with the navicular bone, with the coffin bone, and then the angles. You can assess sole depth, the palmar angle I just mentioned. You might hear about plantar angle, that's hind hoof balance. That's becoming more in vogue to include hinds in the hoof balance radiographs too. You can assess their toe length and breakover, which can be very important in some horses with stumbling, or horses with heel pain, and then medial to lateral imbalance. So this image on the lower right, you can see this horse is a bit high lateral and a bit low medial. But again, if you were to look at this foot just grossly with the naked eye, you really can't pick up on these subtleties. And so the hoof balance would be a great thing to include in your performance exam. Awesome. That was just a quick overview for everybody. I know I threw a lot of info out there. This is my email though, if you'd like to get some slides or have questions about anything I reviewed. I'm really happy to answer your questions. So just jot down my email. And thanks, Mary. I'm really glad to be here, share some information, and very excited to hear more from our panelists.
Yeah, that was great. So if anyone has any questions, you can write them in the chat. And I'll also be sure to send out Dr. Kremberg's email address in an email after tonight's meeting. So in case you don't get to jot it down right away, I'll be sure to send that out. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. Let's see. So I think we are going to move into our panel discussion. So tonight we are welcoming Liz Austin as our moderator, and then our panelists are Ben Ebeling, Kerrigan Gluch, and Natalie Pye, and we're very excited to have them with us tonight. So let me just quickly introduce Liz, and then I think, Liz, if you can ask our panelists just to quickly introduce themselves. So Liz Austin has been a dressage competitor since she was 5. At age 22, she made her Grand Prix dressage debut in Europe, riding Olivier, her mother's homebred stallion. Liz has had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest riders and trainers in the world, including London Gray, Debbie McDonald, Conrad Schumacher, and Carl Hester. And she has trained and competed multiple horses to the international levels. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. So tonight we have on the panel, we have Ben Ebeling, Kerrigan Gluch. Is that how I say it? Gluch.
It's Gluch, but that's
Gluch. I'm so sorry. That's always how I say it in my head. Gluch.
Yeah.
Kerrigan Gluch and Natalie Pye. So I guess probably the best way for us to just get started is Kerrigan, maybe we can start with you. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you started in riding and in dressage and a little bit of your backstory?
Yeah, I started when I was 5, so I'm 25 now, so I was riding for a while. I came from a really small town in Michigan, where really the only riding or like equestrian, sport was 4-H. So I started in 4-H, doing like every discipline under the sun. And learned from a young age that I didn't like jumping at all. It scared the crap out of me. So when I was around 12, I focused more on dressage, and then got involved with the Dressage4Kids program, which then introduced me to more people, and Hampton Green Farm, who I work for now. So yeah, that's kind of a brief backstory.
And what about you, Natalie? How did you get started, and did you start with dressage or?
Hi. So my mom has always really loved horses. And I started riding. We always kind of joke that I started riding when I was like in her belly. But when I was a kid, I really just liked to, play with them and take my horses on trail rides and bareback and that kind of thing. I really loved like pretending that I was like a soldier on my little pony, and I would like grab a stick and I would like go play in the forest. And anyway, yeah. Then I actually wanted to be a jumper because I liked going really fast, but my parents wouldn't let me. So I started doing dressage. I probably I got more serious about it when I was like 16 or so. And prior to that, I really just, I really just like to hang out with the horses and just kind of, play with them. Yeah.
Sure. And what about you, Ben?
Hey, so I started riding, I think probably when I was about 5. I've always grown up with horses. So of course my dad is a Olympic rider. So that's kind of been part of my life for quite a long time. I started really competitive show jumping. That was the first thing that I fell in love with. And yeah, I did that up until I was about, I think I did my first Grand Prix when I was 16, and I kept doing them until I was about 18. And then I sort of shifted a little bit more towards dressage. Just because when I went to college, my my parents couldn't keep my dressage or my jumping horses going. They taught my one jumper the whole Prix St. George. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, no, now I'm doing fully dressage, but hoping to get back into jumping at some point.
Excellent, excellent. So, so Kerrigan, maybe we'll start with you. So as far as, discovered dressage and, you've competed how many times in Europe now?
I've gone on as a young rider and then as a U25 rider.
Great. Can you just tell us a little bit about, what did you have to do to qualify and some of your different experiences that way?
Yeah, well, I went in, what year was that? 2016 as a young rider. I believe. Yeah, 2016. And it's similar to the qualifications. It still is right now. There's a certain, you have to get certain scores at that level. And then they have an ongoing ranking list throughout the season with all of the young riders that meet that criteria. And then when it comes down to the deadline of the show season, they take, the top, I went with 2 other people, so top 3 young riders, based on the ranking list and based on the soundness of the horses and all of those things. And then we traveled over and did 2 shows as a young rider, ending in Hagen and the CDIOY, which was really a really cool experience because it was like our first time doing like a Nations Cup type setup as a young rider. So it was really all about the US team and representing, and that was really special and something that I always dreamed of doing. So doing that was really exciting. And then as a U25 rider, because U25 is still growing in this country, it was, now there's a lot more riders at that level competing, but just a couple of years ago, it wasn't as popular, I guess, or, we didn't have all the horses and the riders and the combinations to send a whole team as a U25 team. Hopefully now there's more and more people, but I was invited to go to just compete and get experience with Natalie, who we were lucky enough to be able to travel with the whole US senior team, which was really something that I was just starstruck the entire time for the most part. Just I think, again, like competing in Europe is incredible and like getting that experience, but I also think learning like the behind the scenes part that you don't really nobody knows about other than if you're like in the crowd. And I think that was something that I really like focused on, as well as riding, of course, but the small details of like how the top riders and trainers like took care of their horses, and like the time and energy that took every day that they took for the horses was something that I really was, really excited to learn about. And yeah, I competed twice in Europe with another horse as U25. And then, sorry.
Did you own the horse? Did Hampton Green owned all of them, or?
Yeah, the
Cool.
young rider horse was a Hampton Green bred. He was a stallion at that time. So that was really special. And then the U25 horse was a stallion that Hampton Green owned as well.
Nice.
And yeah, I was able to, I didn't get to compete in Aachen, but I was able to go experience and cheer everyone on. So that was really special.
Excellent. And Natalie, how about you? Can you just tell us a little bit about, your European adventures and a little bit about how you got there and the horses you rode?
Sure. So, I went for the U25 the year that Kerrigan went, and sorry. Sorry, someone just got home. Anyway, so I went the year with Kerrigan, and I went with a horse named Unlimited, who I called Jazzy. And we went to Ludelange, which is in Luxembourg, Rotterdam, and then we went to Aachen. And same thing that Kerrigan said. I think it was really awesome being able to just see everything that all the senior riders did, being able to watch their lessons. It was it's a really fun experience. It's actually how I ended up training with Debbie in exchange for videoing her riders' lessons. So,
awesome.
And I was like, absolutely, like it was. So that was really awesome. So I got to train with Debbie while I was over there, and it was an amazing experience. And
Excellent. And what about you, Ben?
So my first tour in Europe was, I think in 2018. I think I was actually there with Kerrigan and Natalie. I was doing the Young Rider Tour that year. Actually, I have a picture on my wall here of the first time I competed in Hagen at the Future Champions Tour with my horse Ebeling, who was my Young Rider horse and my junior horse, and is now kind of my U25 horse, I guess. And then I went again in 2019 with two horses, Ebeling and Elusser, doing the Young Riders. And that was the first year then that I started doing like U25 stuff. And then as things kind of started happening, I was really lucky to go last summer again to Europe, but this time compete in the big tour. So I went to Rotterdam, competed at the 5-star there. I did the 5-star in Aachen as well, which was a fantastic experience competing on the Nations Cup team. And it was honestly a big dream of mine to show at that venue. Of course, I always thought I was going to be doing it in jumpers, but it was good enough. Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. So I guess I'll just open this up to who wants to answer. So can someone maybe fill us in a little bit on how the horses travel to Europe and just that process and everything? Any tips for hopeful future people wanting to go to Europe? Anyone?
Sure, I can take that. Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, I can take that. So normally what we do is we ship them through I think there's a couple of companies. For sure, Duda is the one that my family uses. And I think that's, of course, what the team uses too. So what they do is you go, at least for here in Florida, you go down to Miami, you load your horses onto these boxes, and I think they think they're really just like a trailer. And so then they get loaded onto these boxes. The boxes then get loaded onto a flight, which is really just a cargo flight. There's no passengers on it. And then you go into Amsterdam normally. I think there's a couple of other airports in Europe that you can go to, and then you pick them up on the other side. but it's normally a quite a good experience, especially if you get to fly with the horses. You're kind of the acting groom, of course. You have to, you know, make sure that they're safe. A couple of times during the flight, they don't like you to go back with the horses so much, because they like them to have some peace and quiet as well. But you know, making sure that they have water, you always have to take care of not just your own horse, but the other ones that are flying too, because not everybody has a groom on the flight.
Yeah, sure. Now, so Natalie, can you maybe just tell us a little bit, how do the horse shows in Europe differ than the horse shows here? Was there any real standout differences that you feel enriched your experience?
I think the biggest thing is that the audience over there actually knows what they're watching. So I think it's always really fun because, you know, if someone makes a mistake, everyone goes, no, or if someone does something really well, everybody will kind of like, you know, cheer you on. I think that was definitely the biggest thing, is it's just a much more electric atmosphere. And yeah, you can't really get away with making any mistakes.
Yeah. And Kerrigan, anything you'd like to add to that as far as competing in Europe and how the shows are and everything?
I think just like like she said about the atmosphere, but also in the type of people, like the horse, it's a horse world basically. So you don't feel like so much of like the oddball out when you like go out in public, or I mean like of course in Wellington or like in like horse places in this country is the same way, but like a lot of times in like small towns or like where I grew up, if you wear riding pants to the grocery store, you're like, what are you? So I think just being in that horse world is inspiring. I mean, it's intimidating because like everyone rides amazingly. So you also get that pressure, but also I think it's just really inspiring to just be engulfed with all those just horse people, which is nice.
Sure, absolutely. And what about you, Ben? Anything else?
No, it's just a really great experience showing over there. I've been, you know, super fortunate. The three of us have been super fortunate to be able to show over there. And I think it's not just that, but it's also like being able to compete against these really top riders who, I mean, they really go and show out to all of these CDIs.
Yeah.
And, you know, being able to learn from that, watching the Grand Prix there at these international competitions, as well as, you know, some of the other stuff like even small tour. I mean, the riding is just fantastic, and it's a really great way to learn.
Yeah. Any favorite venues as far as?
Oh, for sure Aachen. But I went there with my dad when I was young, and that was really great. Also, Horses and Dreams is fantastic. So
In Hagen, right? That's great.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And what about you, Kerrigan? Any favorite venues that you loved?
I think Aachen is just Aachen. Like if you make it to Aachen, you feel like, you know, you've made it somewhere. So I think just that facility, like the arena and stuff is like I said, I haven't been able to ride in it, but I would assume it's probably incredible to ride in an arena like that.
Sure.
But I also, like Ben said, Hagen is, the facility is nice, but like when we went as young riders, they also do all of the jumping at the same time, but it's all for like young riders and juniors and like children. So you see all of these like, I don't know, 9 and 10-year-olds just flying around the arena, jumping everything. And I would never do that, but it's incredible to watch. So I think just having that diversity in the show arena is really entertaining and really fun. It makes it a little bit of a lighter atmosphere, not so serious like dressage is.
Absolutely. And Natalie?
Yeah, definitely Aachen. I think it's just like
You showed it. Did you show it, Aachen?
I did, yes,
You
in the
did, yeah.
U25. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. The opening ceremonies are so much fun. Riding in the closing ceremonies also is just, I mean, it's insane. You're like in the jumping stadium with everybody else, all the riders, and you rent horses, and there's German marching music playing, and everybody's like, you know, with the handkerchiefs, like it's insane. It was such an amazing experience. Yeah, it was really cool. And they also have amazing ice cream.
That's great. Do you guys have any funny show experiences that you want to share? Do you want to start?
Okay, this was actually not at a show. It was during the pre-export quarantine before Tokyo. So I was lucky enough to get to go there and be with the team as the second alternate. Did not go to Tokyo, but I got to ride with all of the riders that were going to Tokyo and watch them prepare their horses. And I had always heard that Isabel, when you're in the warm-up with her, like she will run you over. And I
100%.
didn't really believe it. I really didn't believe it. And I was, just going around. It was me and her in there. And I was going left to left, and she keeps coming closer and closer. And I get more and more towards the rail. And she's just like, I'm going to run you over. And so it was hilarious, but also really scary at the same time.
That's awesome. What about you, Kerrigan? Any funny stories?
I mean, there weren't any like catastrophes like Ben almost had. I don't think, but I think it was, I can't think of anything in one thing in particular, but like I hadn't spent like a ton of time with a lot of the senior riders, or like even Natalie before the trip together. And then like after, like during it and after, like there's like Natalie's one of my best friends now, so it was just fun to like, there was one restaurant that we would go and get milkshakes at, totally unhorse related, and it was called Den Basduin. And it was just an ongoing joke that because where we were at, there weren't a ton of like restaurants. It was, nothing too exciting was happening in the area. So we would always just say Den Basduin date and just go get milkshakes and random food when we were done at the barn, because I only had one horse. So you basically watched the horse all day and got milkshakes. And I was doing school at the same time. But yeah, I think just the again, like I really enjoyed the behind the scenes part and the showing, of course. But I think behind the scenes and like getting to know the people involved is I really enjoy, because then you start to like, you see all these people compete, like going to the Olympics, and like all that's amazing. Like they're incredible riders, but like I also like to know like how they are with their horses and like what they do on a daily basis. And I enjoyed that aspect just as much as competing. So it's not really a funny story, but yeah.
And what about you, Natalie?
I have a lot of embarrassing stories. I feel like I embarrass myself a lot. I think probably my very first show when I was a kid, I had this horse named Black Bow, and he was like just a saint. And I think I was like 7 or 8, and it was like, it wasn't even a real show. It was like, anyway, and these birds like dive bombed us, and he was like 23, just like didn't move very fast. But anyway, he like scooted slightly, and that was enough for me though. And so I like fell onto his neck and then like fell underneath him. I was like holding on as he was like trotting, and then I just had to let go, and I like fell underneath him. But anyway, they let me get back on and go in and do my test. And then my steering, of course, wasn't very good. And so we're going down the long side, and I jump out of the ring, and we keep going. And then I jump back into the ring. And then at the very end, I'm like, yep, I did it. I did a really good job. And then I found out that you're actually not allowed to leave the ring. So I should have been eliminated the first time when I fell off, but I was definitely eliminated the second time when I left the ring. So
That's great. Oh my gosh. And what about, so I guess just changing gears a little bit, would anyone be wanting to share a little bit about your show routine and sort of how you prepare mentally for competing? We can start with you because your pretty face is on the screen with Natalie.
I'm sure I can begin. So I like to listen to music and kind of just I have like a playlist that I usually play, and I kind of just like to, I don't know, just laugh and hang out. I feel like
Playlist.
I'm sorry.
What's on your playlist?
It's actually like it's not the conventional like, like pump up music. It's like it's like classical music actually. Like dramatic, like movie soundtrack songs. I don't know. I think they're really pretty. So yeah, I usually listen to that because it kind of is like, pumps you up, but then it's also like very calming. So yeah, and then I just kind of like to hang out and see how the horse is feeling and yeah.
Good. And what about you, Ben? Can you share with us a little bit about your show prep routine?
Yeah, of course. So normally on a show day, I ride in the morning. I've got some horses that I have to, of course, ride beforehand, and then I usually start getting in the zone probably about an hour or so before. I have to be at the show, and I like to be at the show probably 20 minutes or so, maybe 25 minutes before I get on the horse for my warm-up. But starting like an hour back, I'll just backtrack a little bit. I do a lot of visualization. I kind of just sit in my bed and close my eyes, visualize my test exactly how I want it to be. Try to be, have everything very quiet around me. After that, I do a lot of stretching, probably 20 minutes or so of stretching, all kinds of different stuff, mostly my back and my hamstrings. And that whole time I'm listening to a football podcast. So that's always the same one, a football podcast.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. And then so I get in my car, and then I listen to my playlist, which is 3 songs, always the same songs, and I get really pumped up from that. And then I get to the horse show, and as I'm walking in, I put my sunglasses on, I have my ear pods on, and I play one last song as I'm going in. It's No Church in the Wild by Jay-Z and Kanye West. And usually when I'm walking into my horse, like I'm totally zoned out. And if anybody says like hi to me, I feel bad about it afterwards, but usually I just keep walking, because at that point I'm really focused. And then I always, when I get to my horse, I give them a sugar. And then I do I really like to do the patterns on their butt, the quarter marks. So I always do that with all of my horses, and that's just a routine that I have. And yeah, and then I get on and I'm ready to go.
Excellent. And what about you, Kerrigan?
I think it depends on the show and how many like horses I have to like take care of or get ready. Some shows you're a little crunched for time, so you don't get to maybe have the perfect setup that you like. But in a perfect world, or when I'm showing like my Grand Prix horse, the horse I'm competing now, he likes attention, but he doesn't want to be smothered all day long at the show. He wants his own space as well. So I try to be very like aware of that and try to keep it as the routine of his day is similar to his normal day as much as I can, even though he's at a show. So I think I learned that right away from the beginning that really has helped. So I try to give him the least amount of time to get ready when it comes to like braiding and grooming and stuff that I can without being rushed. So like I don't want to be rushed, but I also like don't want to have him sitting there with a saddle on for too long. So I try to plan out, I normally have him braided like an hour and a half before I want to get on or something like that. And then he'll be already groomed and all that stuff. And basically I want the routine to be like saddle, bridle, get on right away. I like to have myself already ready while I put the saddle and bridle on. So like I said, he doesn't love waiting around. When the saddle goes on, he's ready to go. So I try to be very aware of that, because making him wait just is not beneficial. So I think just from the beginning, I was really aware of that and tried to incorporate that in my getting ready routine. if I'm lucky enough to have help at the show, like getting ready and grooming and that stuff, I'll try to take like 10 minutes when I'm already like dressed and stuff and do a little meditation and try to just get myself like, down to as calm and normal as I can be, so not let the nerves get, the best of me or anything like that. And that's kind of a new thing I've been doing, but it's been really beneficial. And I try to do that right before I get on, and check everything over again before I get on, and then that's kind of it.
Cool. And since your face is up anyway,
Yeah.
what are your plans now and for the future? I know you've had some amazing scores. I keep seeing your name that I pronounced off my head on the scoreboard. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But what are some of your plans? Like, what are your goals? Where are you going?
Well, it's always so hard to say like, oh yeah, these are my goals for the year. But it's my first year with this horse doing the senior Grand Prix, so I have a lot of goals, but they're all very much so like if the horse feels ready for it, because he's only 11, so and hopefully he'll have a long career at this level. So everything that I have goals, I'm just very aware that maybe he's not quite ready for it, or we'll kind of see how he reacts to everything. But I would love to continue getting consistent scores that I've been getting in the Grand Prix, and if I'm lucky enough to compete in Europe again, that would be amazing. But I know that competition is super, super tough. Ben's been banging out these shows left and right, so but like I said, it's all really positive, and I know that he will have a long career, so I'm excited to just see where the rest of the spring and summer takes me. I have a young horse as well that I am just starting off doing the 5-year-olds with, that I'm really excited about. That's kind of a new kind of avenue for me, so I'm also really excited about him.
Also a PRE, that one?
Yeah.
Super, great. Yeah. Great, cool. And how about you, Natalie? What are your goals this year or whenever?
So this is my last year at the U25. I really wanted to qualify to go to Aachen again, but they canceled it again, so that's a bummer. But yeah, as far as the future, I have some younger ones, and obviously I think everybody's goal is of course to one day make a team. But I would obviously love to do that, but I think I really just want to learn how to train all sorts of different horses. I really want to, I think my long-term goal is to train a horse from, have it as a baby and then learn how to train it all the way to the Grand Prix. And, obviously if I can make a team with that horse or with any horse, that would be amazing. But yeah, I really want to see just how much I can learn, and yeah.
Sure. Good. And how about you, Ben?
So this year I'm really doing my best to at least make the shortlist for the WEG team. I'm really excited about my horse. He's going super well. In fact, I'm lucky enough to have 2 Grand Prix horses that I'm competing. Both of them are going super, and I guess we'll see. So for them, that's kind of my goal. And then I've got some youngsters coming up that I'm very excited about. So yeah.
Great. And so this is the final question for me, which I sort of added in. So what is one thing, and Ben, we can start with you. What's one thing you wish that you knew sooner? It can be a horse management thing. It can be a competition thing. Anything in particular that you feel like, gosh, I wish I had known that you were what, like 15, 5 years ago or something, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's one thing that I wish I knew a bit sooner. I think just getting into a routine is so important at a show. For me, like if I can keep everything the same, and limit the amount of things that change, especially for my horse, but also for me, I think that's something that goes a long way. Because I mean, you have to go to all of these different venues, show up and show out. And, you know, if the horse is uncomfortable, if you're uncomfortable, then it's most likely not going to go well. But if you can maintain a certain level of comfort, and, you know, enjoyability of the show ring and your own show program, then I think that's something that goes a long way.
Yeah, great. And Kerrigan, how about you?
I think it's similar to what Ben said about a schedule and a routine, but I think adding on to that, I learned just from traveling and showing a good amount, that like I'm the biggest voice for my horse. It sounds kind of corny, but like when you travel and you go to different shows and you start getting introduced to other trainers, and like a lot of people want to put their 2 cents in a little bit, where, you know, maybe something, you know, I always take everything with a very open mind. Like maybe something that someone tells me will help the horse, and then try it and then it doesn't work, or it does work. But I think if you know your horse well enough, which I would assume everyone here does, at the end of the day, you probably know if it's going to work or your horse is going to like it or respond well to it. So I think that was something that I think I realized later on, I guess. But I think it's really important to know, like, you can speak up for your horse. The horse's best interest is like number one, and like just trust your gut a bit. Because most of the time, like I said, if you know the horse, your gut's normally right. And that's definitely goes into showing. And, you know, when you get to a show and there's high pressure, like people want to push you and you want to produce the good scores and all this stuff, which absolutely that comes with the territory. But maybe someone doesn't know your horse well enough to know, like, you shouldn't do that, or you should, or, you know, the schedule and you knowing exactly what your horse can handle and not handle is, I think, really important to know when you want to go compete. And yeah, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. And how about you, Natalie?
I think the biggest thing that I wish I knew sooner is that just to not take everything quite so seriously. And obviously, yes, it is a very serious sport, and there's so much time and energy and money poured into doing this every single day. And whenever you get to a show and you want to, you know, you always want to get your new personal best, and you always want to, you know, do as well as you possibly can. There's always such an immense amount of pressure that, you know, you put on yourself, others put on you. But at the end of the day, like, you know, if it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be having fun with it. And if it's not fun, then I mean, why are you doing it? And I think, you know, everybody has had a bad show, and if you haven't, you're going to, because it's just inevitable. I mean, you're working with a creature that has, you know, their own opinions and their own feelings, so of course they're always going to have, you know, a bad day, or you're having a bad day, or it's not always going to go as well as you hoped it would. So I think if you can just kind of, you know, take a step back and, you know, just appreciate any of the good moments. And I think just remembering that it's supposed to be fun is, I think, the biggest thing.
Sure. That's great. Can someone explain to me a little bit like about the Discover Dressage program and what it's all about a little bit? Anyone?
I can try to.
Yeah.
It was, well, I don't know all the specific details, but from my understanding, it's a program that basically receives funding and gives funding directly to the mostly to all the youth programs. So, you know, whenever there's any money coming in, the Discover Dressage like shoots it right out to the youth programs, which is something that's fairly new, because most of the time there's money kind of dispersed everywhere, but this is just like a straight shoot into the programs that need it the most. And it was designed for youth, and that's where the support is still. So
Good. All right, thank you. So I'll just move on to a few of our questions. This one is from Abby, and she asks to everyone, how do you feel your experiences will shape what you do in the future?
Want me to start?
Yep.
Okay. I think just any experience you can in a show setting or just in the horse world in general, good or bad, can really shape how you make decisions and how you choose to present yourself and show. I think, when you see something you don't really like, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to ride like that. And then when you see someone that you look up to and admire that and the horse is going beautifully, you just say like, that's great. I want to imitate that. So I think I have had some amazing experiences where, you get to compete on a team and travel and all this stuff. But I also think the small experiences is equally as beneficial. I think you can gain knowledge from anything. It doesn't have to be a European tour. I've just been lucky enough to be able to do that. So I had maybe just a little bit of a jump start in, like, for my age, I guess, in competing in Europe. But yeah, I think I've learned a lot just from just being exposed to a lot of different scenarios, not just going to Europe.
Good. And how about you, Natalie? Same question. How do you feel your experiences will shape what you do in the future?
I think very similar to what Kerrigan said. I think as you grow up and you learn what things work for you, what things don't work for you. Sometimes, like what Kerrigan said, sometimes people think that, saying something to you is beneficial when in reality that's not what you need to hear in that moment. Or someone thinks that this might be good for your horse when you now know that it's not. Or I think you learn how to what you need before you ride, before you show, and just kind of getting yourself into the right headspace before you do anything. Yeah, I don't know.
Excellent. And how about you, Ben? Same question.
So I think my experiences have been, they've shaped me so much into the rider I am right now. And if there's one piece of advice that I think I can take from my past experiences, is that consistency in training is so important. My dad always told me when I was growing up and doing juniors and young riders, I mean, I even remember saying to him, "Papa, I am never going to get the 3 tempies, never, ever." And then like 2 weeks later, the horse did it. And it was like, and I it's always the same thing. You feel like you're never going to get it on a horse. And then it's like, it happens. So it's just consistency in training and, not getting upset or emotional, and just kind of, pushing through and figuring things out that work for your horse. So yeah.
Good. Okay, now we're supposed to deliver Kerrigan a message that Perlita says hi. Perlita?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Hello.
And then we have a vet question. So, do you continue annual vaccinations even when horses are over the age of 25?
Okay, the short answer is yes. Some horses in their older years actually lose immunity faster than younger horses, but a lot of times a 25-year-old might not be living at like a show barn anymore. So if they're retired, then they're not going to need, a flu rhino, for instance, but their rabies, their tetanus, their Eastern, Western, and West Nile are those core vaccines, and they will be exposed to mosquitoes for sure. And tetanus anytime they get a nick. So yes, the answer is yes.
Good. And does anyone have advice that you would give to the younger kids that are, that have joined us today? Just, any tips that you have for how to get to where you guys are and things that have helped you along the way?
I guess I can go first.
Thank you, Kerrigan.
I think just coming up through the Dressage4Kids program, I know exactly what it feels like to look up to someone or to see someone showing the Grand Prix and like think, how in the world am I going to get there? or like I don't ride that well, or I don't have the right horse, or my horse is not fancy enough, and I think I thought those things as well. I had no idea that I would be doing Senior Grand Prix at the age of 25. So I think my biggest thing that I always try to push and tell people is you never really know where an opportunity is going to come from. I got my opportunity with Hampton Green through the Robert Dover Clinic, but I had to borrow a horse, and one of the horses that I was borrowing went lame, and we had to switch horses, and the horse that I was able to ride just happened to be a Hampton Green farm horse that was donated for the clinic. So it was just one of those like fluke things that was not planned. There wasn't any, of course there was like hard work to put into the clinic, but it was just pure, like the opportunity presented itself, and you never know when those opportunities are going to come. So, do your best to just be honest and nice and open to people, because you never know when they're going to remember you or think about you and be like, oh, I like that kid when she was 12 or whatever, and try to give the opportunities, because people remember, and they know, and they remember when people are nice, and remember when they're polite and presented themselves well and that type of thing. So I think the biggest thing is, you never know when opportunity is going to come, so just be ready to jump on it.
Good. How about you, Natalie? Right, there you go.
Sorry.
Just as far as like advice for younger kids on the call.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was the previous question that was okay. I'm sorry.
You're fine, no worries.
Anyway, I guess, yeah, I think I would take advantage of, there's so many more opportunities for for the youth now than there was even whenever we originally started doing this just a few years ago. And so definitely take advantage of that. The Dressage4Kids program is amazing. Obviously, being able to tune into these calls, and I think yeah, definitely. I think also I think it's really important just to ask a lot of questions. I think people are a lot more helpful than you think they are, and I know it can be really intimidating to talk to new people, and especially to top riders and everything. But I think most people want to help, and especially help the younger kids, and because there's so many things that you're just you're never going to know unless you ask. And I think yeah.
Good. And how about you, Ben?
Biggest piece of advice I could give is fall in love with the everyday training, not the shows. I think showing is such a fun part of the sport, and you can compete and make friends at the shows, and take courses up the levels, and that's really fun. But really, it's the everyday training that is most important. And falling in love with your horses and the routine, I think that's really great. And maybe one piece of advice that I could maybe give for juniors and young riders, like for like the tests that they have to do, is accuracy is so important. Like just like riding the lines and the corners like perfectly, the judges love that. So yeah.
Good. We have a question from Aiden. After a show that does not go your way, how do you mentally prepare yourself for the next horse show? That's to everyone. Let's start with Ben, if you want.
Yeah, sure. I've definitely had a lot of horse shows that have not gone my way. So actually, so specifically with my Grand Prix horse that I'm competing right now at Leicester, I've had a bit of a problem on the last center line because he's such a hot horse just naturally. And for whatever reason, that last center line, the passage, PF passage, he just doesn't like going to that spot. He puts everywhere else, he passages everywhere else, but just in that exact spot, it's for whatever reason, he gets freaked out. And so I've spent a lot of time, training him and doing all different kinds of things to maybe get to his small brain just to tell him, it's going to be okay. But I know there were a couple of shows there that, it didn't get better, and it actually got worse. And I think going in the show arena every day with the mentality, okay, it's going to be okay. Just have to ride calm, cool, and collected, and it'll work itself out at some point. And it was really cool in the 5-star after so many tries of just trying to get this right and being angry at myself, like maybe I'm doing something wrong. And I mean, I remember crying after a couple of training sessions, it's so frustrating. But finally at the 5-star a couple of weeks ago, I fixed it. It's all good. So yeah.
Good.
So just continuing through the everyday training and consistency, staying unemotional when you ride, and just trusting the process. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Sure. And how about you, Kerrigan? Any good tips on how you mentally prepare yourself for the next horse show if you have one that maybe doesn't go your way?
Yeah, well, nobody wants to have a bad show. So I think the horses, they're so incredibly humbling. Even if you didn't have like a huge disaster of a test, there's always something that you want to improve on. I don't know. I mean, most people, any true like dressage person comes out of the ring, even if it was a fantastic score, and just says like, I want to do that better. Like that wasn't perfect. So I think it's just before you show, knowing that like nothing's going to be perfect. So don't try to make it perfect, and just kind of ride from what you're feeling, and do the best you can in that moment, because at the end of the day, you're not going to fix anything from like the warm-up ring to the arena. So the horse won't know that either. They're like, why are you aiding me differently, or why are you trying to tell me to do things differently? So I think for me it is still just telling myself like the arena is the same way, it's just a different location. You don't ride differently, just like ride how you do every day at home. And then if you check yourself, one, like if you're good as a rider, then like that you need to make a few corrections here and there. But I think after a show that maybe doesn't go, or a test that doesn't go exactly how I would like it, if there was like a huge problem, hopefully there's not, but things happen. My first reaction would be like 100% make sure the horse is not hurting in any way, make sure that something that didn't go well was not caused by like pain in any way. I think that was like my first initial thought after something like that would happen. And then just try not to beat myself up too much. I think everyone's super hard on themselves. But at the end of the day, like Natalie said a few minutes ago, they are animals and they do have a mind of their own. And going around a sandbox probably isn't in their brain wanting to do. They would rather go eat. So I think just thinking of them as like an equal to you, as a partnership, and not making sure that they're good so then you can be good. I always try to put myself in their shoes, if you will, and see like how are they reacting to an arena, and how can I help them. And then if the stars align and it's a great test, then that's fantastic. But I think just like Ben said, trusting the process of it, and that it's not going to be perfect every time, but with time and experience, it typically does get better. And just know, like, if I come out of the ring and I'm like super upset and it wasn't great, like typically nobody really cares enough to like follow it for more than a day. So it's not that big of a deal. Everyone gets over it.
Yeah.
Like owners come around, like you come around, and then the horses go back to the stall and they just want their food and the day's over with. So they don't hold on to it at all most of the time anyways. So why should we? And then start the day fresh. I try anyways. Doesn't always work like that, but I try.
Great. And what about you, Natalie?
I think it's really important to make sure that, of course, horses take up so much of your time and so much energy in you. But I think it's really important to have a healthy support group outside of the horses too. Make sure you have your friends, your loved ones, your significant other, just be really, have a really good support group, because like things aren't always going to go your way. Most of the time, they're probably not going to go your way. And when I was my young rider horse, his name was Fritz Santino, and he was also, a very, very hot horse. And, one day we'd go in and we would do amazing and we'd win. And then the next day we would go in and be a disaster and we'd get eliminated. And so it was a constant, roller coaster of emotions. And, we went to NAYC and we won the individual gold. And then we went to nationals and I got eliminated. And so, but making sure that you have your friends that are there for you, and hopefully you have a really good barn family that's there for you whenever things don't go your way. Because like I said, I mean, with horses, it's not always going to go your way, and you are going to have a bad ride, and you're probably going to have a lot of them. But I mean, you just have to pick yourself up and try again. And it can be really nerve-wracking, and you do put a lot of pressure on yourself. And like I was saying earlier, even though you have so much pressure on yourself and you have other people putting pressure on you, it's supposed to be fun. And I think you have to remember why you're doing it. And you're not doing it to win, you're not doing it to break records, you're not doing it to do all these things. You're doing it because you once fell in love with horses, and you're supposed to be having fun with it. You're supposed to be having fun just riding. So
Super. One more sweet little note from Lily Ferrado, who's an incredible photographer. She said, I had the opportunity to watch Ben, Natalie and Kerrigan show in Europe, and they were amazing in Hagen, Rotterdam, and Aachen. Exclamation points and hearts and smiles. So you guys are amazing. So many of us have gotten to see you compete in person and on the television. You guys are total superstars. This has been wonderful. Thank you very, very much for sharing with all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And thank you, Lil.
thank you.